Welcome to the International Webinar on Urban Horticulture, a necessity for food and the environment, organized by IASTM in association with IRAJ Webinars. On the behalf of entire organizing committee, I'm Isaac Behra, organizing secretary. Would like to welcome you all for this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the organization. The motto behind this non-profit association is to bridge the gap between students, professors, academics, and industrialists from multidiscipline. Apart from organizing various seminar, expert talks, and conferences, we have various highly rated multidisciplinary journals in the field of science, engineering, technology, and management. Since our inception, we have been arranged various international conferences at various parts of the world, like New York, London, Australia, Dubai, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, India, etc. More than 2 lakh people across the globe are associates with us, and more than 5 lakh research papers have been presented and published during our journey. Today, I'm glad to welcome you all as a member of this fastest growing network for the advancement of science and technology in terms of research and innovation. Today, we are very much fortunate to have an eminent professor and expert who is joining this webinar as an expert speaker and guest. First name is Dr. Urvashi Sharma. So I would like to welcome our professor to start the webinar.
Here I am to speak on urban horticulture, which is a real necessity for the food and the environment. I have put a picture of one of my plants here, which is petunia in a container, because as we all know, in urban horticulture, we usually use containers, and I've added some pebbles for the beautification. So in this way, our environment and my house looks beautiful. So that was the motto behind putting this photo. Now I move to the next slide. Now, what is horticulture? As we all know, horticulture is a branch of plant science which deals with the growing and management of the crops and even marketing of the horticultural crops like fruits, vegetables, flowers, and medicinal aromatic plants, etc. Now, what is urban horticulture? Urban horticulture is a branch of horticulture in which we talk about the plants which are grown in the urban areas. Now, if we talk about the scenario of the Indian population, in India, 36% of people are staying in the urban areas as per the records of the world world data records as per them, and it will increase day by day. So we have to be very careful and to grow the plants here and to increase our horticulture here. Now, what is the history of urban horticulture? This has been used for many, many centuries. The plants were grown in buildings, gardens, factories, the parks were laid. The main concept started in the 19th century in Germany, where the government allotted lands for the cultivation of the crops, the useful crops, and that gives employment to the people. So it was good in that aspect. And from 20th century, it became very, very popular. The concept of community gardening arose at that time in Germany and in other countries like UK and USA, which is followed in many, many countries. Many people from the particular area, they take care of the gardens, they build up the gardens. The excess is sold to the markets, local markets. So, and it also helped to provide the employment to the disadvantaged backgrounds. Now, let's talk about what are the techniques. Usually the techniques which we involve is growing the plants in the kitchen, like in the window where there's bit amount of sunlight. The plants can be grown there, required for the kitchen. Indoor gardening can be done in the balconies or even some other places in the living rooms or bedrooms even for plants. And to produce to produce them, we need the artificial lighting sometimes if the light is not sufficient, and water requirement as the plants need. Shade-loving plants, herbs, and sprouts are mostly grown here. Terrace and balcony gardening is also very popular. These are the least used spaces in the house which could be used for growing plants. It looks beautiful. Urban landscaping, the other point, which is about growing the plants around the streets and in the parks. The environment looks beautiful, and there are lots and lots of things that they can control. The plants control pollution. I'll discuss about it later on. The greenhouse gardening. To make up the polyhouses and greenhouses, it is by single personnel, business personnel, or by local community. And the produce, if it is excess, could be delivered to the market and sold. so it increases employment. There's something called vertical gardening, which I'll explain in the next slide, and even hydroponics, aeroponics, and the aquaponics. Now, the concept of vertical gardening appeared when there was less space and the people thought of growing the plants, more and more plants. So this was done to maximize space in the smaller areas. It could be well mounted, or it could be hand, or in the trailing forms, or it can also be a form of companion planting. Companion planting is a very good way of controlling the pests and diseases in the plants. It is one of the organic method. So in companion planting, suppose if we grow tomatoes, along with the tomatoes, which could be grown in these tiers. So along with the tomatoes, if basil are planted, then the tomatoes will get least infection, because the smell of the basil plants will deter the pests and disease causing organisms. So the companion planting is becoming very popular these days. Now let's talk about the hydroponics. Again, it's a concept because it is used in the places where there is less space, and we can grow plants under unfavorable climatic conditions by providing them proper conditions like the temperature, proper carbon dioxide, proper nutrients, and they could be well monitored. And usually they adopt the vertical arrangements so that there are more plants to be accommodated. Soil is not used because, as we all know, hydroponics is a system where we grow the plants through the water. So the water acts as a labor to produce the plants. Pests and disease incidents are also lesser because they are well monitored, and they don't have the soil borne diseases, as the soil is not there, and usually it's hard to find soil in the urban areas many times. They have faster growth rates. They are like the babies who are fed spoon fed, so they get lots and lots of nutrients, so they grow well. Some of the crops which are usually grown here are the basil, the beans, spring onions, strawberries, the tomatoes, lettuces, radishes, cucumbers, spinach, etc. There are different methods. I have chosen the 4 methods which are usually used. So the first method is about the wick system. The wick system is like having the wicks which are in the nutrient solution. It will absorb the nutrients from the nutrient solution or from the tanks, and it supplies to the plant. This system is not much used because the plants may get more amount of nutrients, or it can get less amount. So the plant may be getting overfed, or it is starved. There could be less amount of water available to them. It is not much used. Now, there are different other forms of hydroponics. One is the deep water culture. Deep water culture is like growing the plants in the in the nutrient solution. Like sometimes when we take the cuttings, what we do, instead of putting in the soil, we can just put in water, and the water itself helps as a medium in which the cuttings can grow well. So the deep water culture is used. The problem in this culture is it's an easy method. We don't need a lot of setup and all, but main problem is their roots may be not getting enough of oxygen, so they need some air pumps to keep the roots safe and the plant safe. The other system of hydroponics is the drip system. In this way, in this particular form, the plants are getting the required amount of water, and the excess water is again recycled to the nutrient solution. It goes back to the tank. There are small little emitters here which will supply the water to the root part or the root zone. So this system is widely used as it saves lots of water. Then we talk about the other one, that is nutrient film technique. In this, the concept lies, it is like the drip system, but here what we have is a constant flow of stream flow, which is in the form of a thin stream, or like a small little continuous water which is going through the roots. So this is also a very good technique. It's like a film of water. Plants are surrounded by it. Again, the excess water could be recycled and used again with the nutrients which it has. So these two systems, that is drip system and nutrient film techniques, are most widely used. The other form is aeroponics. Sometimes aeroponics is considered as a part of hydroponics. Like in this method, what we do is we use the air as a medium, or the fog or a mist. The water is in the form of fog or mist, which will supply the nutrients to the roots, and the plants grow well. The aeroponics is considered as a far more advanced system because they don't need any ground surface to grow. they can be just hanging and we can accommodate lots of plants to grow there. So this is one of the most widely used system these days. Lots of saffron cultivation is occurring here and in different parts of the world through the aeroponics, and the different crops like the lettuce and many, many vegetables, leafy vegetables, herbs are being grown through all these methods. Now, as I said, aeroponics is also considered as a part of hydroponics or as hydroponics, because in this method, even if you are using fog or mist, it is in the form of water soluble nutrients. So water is used. So sometimes people say aeroponics is a form of hydroponics. Now, here I am showing a vertical hydroponic system. We can get these in the markets, even easy to get them to grow our plants vertically to accommodate more number of plants. Now let's talk about aquaponics. Aquaponics is having a dual function. It supplies us with the aquatic animals like the fish or the crabs, etc. And the plants are grown here. So the concept, the most of the fishes which are used here are the crayfish, the tilapia, carp, goldfish, catfish, and trout, because they have good reproduction rate, they survive longer, and they are really very good. They produce more nutrients, more nutrients. So what happens is there is a tank over here. The tank contains the fish, and there are pumps available. What these fish will do, they'll excrete, and the excreta is converted into nitrites and then to nitrates by the bacteria and decomposing microorganisms. So plants absorb nitrogen in the form of nitrates. So this goes from this fish tank, it is pumped and it goes to the plants, to the roots, and the plants grow well. As we all know, plants need NPK. So nitrogen is mostly supplied, and nitrogen is one of the major nutrient which is required by the plant to produce the leafy structures, leaves. So NFT is a very good form. Other than that, if the plant is a flowering one, the solution, the fish tank has to have something else, or it will even support the the production of the flowers, little flowers and little fruits, because usually we grow small little plants or through these kind of systems. So it's a aquaponics is far better than other system. We can get two types of things from here, the fish which could be sold and the plants itself. Now, what are the advantages of urban horticulture? One of the biggest advantages, it conserves the biodiversity, because most of the methods which we are using and the plants are closely monitored, we use less amount of pesticides and fungicides and other chemicals. So it helps to save the plants. Plus, when we are growing these types of plants like trees and all, it is good for this environment, and we get the birds and we get a biodiversity of different kinds of microorganisms and other organisms. So it helps in that way to conserve our biodiversity. And the buildings and the metropolitan places, they really need such kind of concept which is being followed. The other point is it controls environmental pollution. As we all know, plants are very good in absorbing the harmful gases, the solar radiations, the noise which we have due to the vehicles, and it increases the humidity. So they are very, very useful for the environment. So the urban horticulture is being really practiced and it's good for environment. And the basic main thing is that we can utilize them in the areas which are lesser used, like balconies and all. So even old buildings where nothing is being cultivated, that can be used. It provides a security of food, like self-sufficiency. We can grow our own food. We can teach our children to grow their own food, and we don't need to rely much on other sources. And it also helps to generate income or as a side income. We can grow organic plants, get the organic labels, and it could be sold to the market at a much higher price. And we can have year-round production because we have all controlled setups for the environment, like the proper amount of nutrients, pH of the medium, the proper nutrients, etc., the temperature, carbon dioxide required for the plants. The other point is it helps in waste management, like the containers or anything what we are just throwing away. It could be used for as containers, and the kitchen waste can be used as a compost. Compost is very good, as we all know. It's a good form, and if we use these kind of things, we don't need to rely much on the harmful pesticides and chemicals, etc. Other than that, it is a great hobby. The hobby, I mean, like if we, if we get to make more friends and all with this, suppose our neighbors have some forms of cut plants and all, and we wish to get them, we can make friends with them. And it is like a kind of meditation for us. So when we take those cuttings, we make friends, we have a good friend circle, and also it is also a great hobby to meet people, to socialize, as well as to provide the calmness to our brain due to stress and anxieties. And with plants, everything looks beautiful. Now, what are the disadvantages? It is not much accepted in many, many places, but this is becoming really very, very popular because of the global warming and other environmental issues. The one of the major disadvantage is environmental and health risk if we are using some chemicals and if they go into our water system and all. So we need to see whatever we use for urban horticulture, they must not be the chemicals and all. It should be more of the organic stuff. Like we can use seaweed sprays or seaweeds as nutrients mixed with water, which is organic, which will provide NPK, the three fertilizers which are needed by the plants, all organic concepts. Then these points don't arise. We need to just take care of it. And there are higher production costs in establishing and maintaining to see that there is proper pH, and also anything which we do artificial, it requires production costs. So that we have to keep in mind. It produces the good produce only when we take care of the system through which we are cultivating the crops in the urban places. Now, the changing environmental conditions, as we all know, due to global warming, there are lots and lots of problems. There are more pests and diseases, and the plants, they try to cope up with these kind of conditions. And there is lots and lots of research needed so that we can control the emerging or the new pests and diseases or the mutated ones. So that's how it it is good in one way that we have to do research, but the other problem is it is creating more pests and diseases too. So we have to be prepared to reduce these types of problems. Now, the future prospects, as we all know, the population is increasing in the urban areas and it will keep on increasing. And there is a lot of migration in urban areas every year. These plants, if they are grown for in the urban places, will have more of nutritional benefits because it will be growing in the places near to us and it is not much processed, so it will be more fresh. It will increase employment, which is really very important for us to survive. Then there is a concept of mushroom cultivation, and in the organic base, it is being implemented from years all over the world. So mushroom can be grown in those organic waste, which is a very good source of food for us, good form of proteins, minerals, folic acid, good for diabetic and obese people. So we can go for such kind of things. Doesn't need much expenditure to grow mushrooms. We just need spawns and a bit of shady place, moist place, and we can grow them. We have to educate our children to grow their own food. This is being practiced almost everywhere in the world these days, even. But we need to tell our kids that they need to grow their own food instead of relying on someone else. And there is a different kind of pleasure in eating the things from what we have in our gardens and all. So we have to educate our kids. The universities are doing their level best. They have already started lots of courses on urban horticulture in lots and lots of places in the whole world. The concept of reduce, reuse, and recycle the urban waste is very, very important. As we all know, the metropolitans could become a big place for the waste. So we have to use them, reduce as much as possible, reuse as containers for the plants, make compost of the biodegradable products and recycle them. So we have to follow these steps. And there are so many latest techniques like the hydroponics, the aeroponics, aquaponics, which will save the water and it will increase the groundwater level, which is very much needed. And the current climatic scenario, which I already discussed, is promoting this sector. Everyone wants to have beautiful gardens in the buildings, in the offices, near the offices, and also it creates a serene environment. So here lies more future prospects, and everybody is working towards it. So I conclude here. Thanks for your quiet hearing. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, ISTEM, and my different beautiful lady, Shri Priya, Hayden, and everyone over here. Thank you so much. It's done.
Happy to proceed. Awesome, great to meet everyone. My name is Hayden and happy to be joining you all today. So a little bit about Priya and I. We have trained and mentored young adults collaborating with nonprofits and universities in organization and community building, using continuous story and telling, learning, and various growth and nurturing strategies at both International Professors Project and Let's Learn Africa. So we're excited today to be continuing the awesome conversation around horticulture. So what we do is content creation, and that really builds urban horticulture awareness by educating, showcasing, and sharing tips, highlighting and sustainability, inspiring action, and ultimately driving adoption to a greener urban environment. So I actually live in New York City and based in New York City, and this is a very popular thing we have here with urban horticulture. So throughout, I'll provide some examples of what I see around my community as we bring gardens and fresh vegetation to the city that's otherwise filled with concrete. So as we look at cultivation in the heart of our training mission, today we're going to talk about two key areas that we'll break down as we go through this presentation. The first being that urban horticulture, where you're cultivating plants and green spaces to create sustainability, thriving ecosystems, and in these urban environments. Welcome, Priya. Can you see the slides?
Yes. I'll let you speak on this slide and then I'll join in.
Perfect. All right, and I'll just close out this slide real quick with touching on that second point that we'll get to as throughout this presentation around content curation, which we are very big on. And as Priya had mentioned earlier on this call, on LinkedIn, we post a lot of content around this topic and others. So when it comes to content creation, we cultivate knowledge and inform to raise awareness about critical environmental issues, climate solutions, and effective waste management practices. And I'll pass the mic to Ms. Priya for any opening words.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Hayden. First of all, I begin with a huge apology about the total chaos from my end, which is I'm working from a cell phone and I am absolutely goofing up with the technology. So Hayden and I predominantly work in the content curation space. So we feel that the first off thing that's important in this area, anything climate related, anything environment related, any adaptation can only begin with awareness. So we wanted to cater to this particular need where we first create the knowing, because the knowing creates the thinking. And it's when the thinking happens, the doing happens. And when the doing happens, then it becomes part of your being. And therefore, any adaptation becomes a success. Hayden, I'm ready for the next slide, my friend.
Priya, are you seeing the advantages of urban horticulture to communities?
I'm not able to see. My screen is frozen at about us. Oops.
I'm happy to
I'm going to
get
go
it
to the
started.
presentation directly.
Awesome. Yeah, if you want to follow
Well,
along
then
in the
I will go to the
presentation.
next.
All right, perfect. While Priya is pulling that up, I'm happy to get started on this slide and then let her jump in on this. So to start off, we want to talk about the advantages of urban horticulture in communities. So the first is increased food security. So urban horticulture provides access to fresh, locally grown produce, improving food security and nutrition. So here in New York, we don't have a lot of natural produced food. It is a lot of concrete and city So in these little communities, we're able to grow very simple things that help the community, such as carrots, tomatoes, and lettuce. We can't grow things that aren't really true to our region, so you won't see a lot of palm trees around New York City. The next is around that community building. So urban horticulture brings people together, fostering community engagement, social connections, and a sense of belonging. So in my community, people actually volunteer to help build these urban horticulture communities, and they show up and volunteer their time. And they also have fun and interesting events going on all the time to get the community involved. And then lastly, environmental benefits. The urban horticulture helps mitigate urban heat islands and improves air quality and supports biodiversity. This has been a very hot summer in New York City, so we're very grateful for our urban community gardens in the city. Awesome. And before I move on to the next slide, is there anything you wanted to add on to this one, Priya?
Hayden, on what slide are we?
We are currently on slide 3, titled Advantages of Urban Horticulture in Communities.
I'm sorry, I can only hear scrambled voices. That's bad.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy
Is
to.
it slide 4?
Yes, we can be on slide 4 now. Societal well-being.
Hello?
Oh, can you hear us?
Is it slide 4 that I'm supposed to speak on, Hayden?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear. I hear it just as noise.
Oh, good. We can hear you. Awesome. I'm happy to keep going. And if Priya, you hear us and can jump in, definitely feel free to. We're on slide 4 with societal well-being. So we just went over some of the key components of it. So let's talk about how these horticultures impact the societal well-being. So the first step is mental health benefits. Urban horticulture provides therapeutic outlet and reduces stress, improving mental well-being. We have a saying here in New York where it's touch grass. Because we don't have a lot of grass, a lot of times you feel very disconnected. So people say, I think it's time to touch grass to get more connected and really give that space between you and the concrete and the technology that surrounds us every day. It provides educational opportunities. So urban horticulture serves as a hands-on learning platform for sustainable growth practices, nutrition, and environmental stewardship. It's very easy to get a bag of chips around here, so it's harder to get the vegetables. So making sure that we're teaching people the benefit of these vegetables and these plants in our society. And lastly is the economic benefits. So urban horticulture can generate income through sales of produce, value-added products, and agrotourism. Something that has been very popular around here is these farmers markets. Everyone loves to go to them and kind of get fresh grown produce that they normally otherwise can't get from their local store. And with that, we'll shift into slide 5 on sustainable community development. And Priya, let me know if you can hear us at all. I'm happy to keep going and feel free to jump in at any point. So the first is beautification, urban beautification. Urban horticulture transforms vacant spaces into vibrant gardens, enhancing urban aesthetics and property values. So people really like the benefits that we just went over, whether it's mental health or bringing in economic flourishes to the area. People really enjoy having these horticulture areas in their communities where previously there may have been nothing. Number 2, working clockwise, climate change resilience. So I had mentioned before that this really helps with heat islands, and it truly does. This helps introduce sustainable food practices and alleviate some of the heat in these communities as the plants absorb that and provide shade. Next, on number 3, public health benefits. Urban horticulture provides access to fresh air, exercise, and healthy food options. So this really introduces a lot to the community that it's present in. And the last is community empowerment. It empowers the communities to really take control of their community. If the area puts in a lot of concrete, puts in a lot of things that aren't going to be helpful or conducive to healthy diets or good temperatures, the community can take that power back. Awesome. So went back one, keep going forward. So we have some fun options in here as we start to think about content and about creating. So this first is this greenfluence. Here are 4 categories that we're going to talk about. And essentially what we did here is combine the green thumb and the green environment into influence, creating influence on social media or within your local community. So a few content examples you see that come to life in this space is horticulture literacy. So people talking about it, talking about plants. Dr. Urisha did an amazing presentation on her own plants, and she is giving us that literacy of what she knows and sharing her knowledge. The next is horticulture highlights, so highlighting those projects and initiatives in the community. The next is wisdom, so actual best tips and best practices, where it's like, sometimes I'll look this up, where it's like, I want to grow a green pepper because I have a lot of green peppers and I don't know what to do with them. How do I grow that? And then lastly, green impact. How has this impacted the community that these people are in as they build them out? So all of this kind of bundling into that green influence. Oh, went the wrong direction again. All right, so here is our second one, hort impact. So the impact of horticulture. So looking at the 2 key breakouts that we had mentioned at the top, we're going to start to show examples against these. So the first is urban horticulture. So selecting the right plants for the right region. Here in New York, we have a lot of winter cabbage during the winter because a lot of other plants simply won't grow. It gets too cold. But then that winter cabbage would not survive our very hot summers. So making sure that you're planting and using horticulture correctly in the region that you have. Next is content curation. So still talking about the selection of selecting your plants and kind of how to grow them. You want to select the right content to educate your audience on the best practices that they can use. So if you're growing winter cabbage, how do you grow winter cabbage? Next is nurturing. So urban horticulture, in this example, it's like, how do you help them grow and thrive? So what does nurturing look like for the type of plants that you're trying to grow? And then when it comes to content creation, utilizing climate solutions and waste management strategies in order to really nurture these plants. If you are in a densely urban community, there's likely a lot of waste. So how are you using that waste to create something new? All right, and I believe the last of our combined words, horticare. So horticulture and caring. We're going to break this down into 3, which is organization, pruning, and maintenance. So when it comes to organization, how do you organize a plant in a way that makes sense? What plants go well together and what plants simply won't grow together? And when it comes to content creation, how does it make sense to have your audience learn about this? Does it make sense to start with the planting or talk about seeds? Think about the process from start to finish. Next would be pruning. Pruning is where you cut back some of the plant in order to let it grow. So in urban horticulture, how do you remove the unnecessary elements that are hindering growth? Pruning is something that may feel scary because you're like, oh, do I need to take this leaf off or not? But the plant simply will not grow if you do not remove the bad parts. And when it comes to content creation, same sort of idea, remove any misinformation or myths about environmental science. If people are saying things that simply aren't true or aren't backed, or it's hindering growth, how can you help relieve this information? And then lastly, maintenance. Maintain the health and care of your plants in your urban community. It's a tougher environment to grow, so you want to make sure you're nurturing and growing that through the process to maintain them. And then when it comes to content creation, same sort of thing. You want to make sure you're nurturing and growing and maintaining with research and developments that continue to come out about environmental science. So as we think about continuing to learn urban horticulture, you want to continuously learn and adapt and try new best practices in sustainable gardening. And when it comes to content creation, it's the same way. Continue to learn and adapt. Take the developments that are happening in environmental science, climate solutions, and waste management, and make sure that you're using the most up-to-date information. So to round out with a thank you. Thank you, everybody. Today we went over horticulture and how this grows in urban environments. And there's a few stories that I won't get fully into around eco-heroism, green impact, and sustainability sagas. And with that concludes the presentation.
Discussing about the climate change adaptation gaps and the role of urban horticulture, how urban horticulture can fit into the adaptation gap, which has been recognized by UNEP. According to the latest report by UNEP, Adaptation Gap Report, the developing countries need at least around 215 billion per year to carry out the meaningful adaptation work. But somehow, which has not been executed, like in 2021, only to 21 billion USD has been contributed to the developing countries for the adaptation project, which was down about 15% from the previous year. So this particular in 2023, this particular adaptation report is based on the adaptation finance and how the availability of money to carry out the adaptation project. So these are the certain examples of the economic and non-economic losses that happens when the adaptation goals were not met. There was a lot of economic losses, which we can see is the agriculture production, business operation, tourism, and there are some non-economic which are the most essential as well. Some losses includes the indigenous knowledge, societal cultural identity, cultural heritage, due to the extreme weather events. So there are the sectoral focus of adaptation action. Around 19% of I'm focused on the agriculture and the livestock, which directly contributes around 90%. The main focus of adaptation goals are, and around 19% for the biodiversity and ecosystem. So the estimate cost of adaptation for developing countries, by the which the tentative plannings are for, like we are particularly concerned about the agriculture. If you can see, around 150 to 200 billion US dollars is required for to have a proper adaptation to meet the adaptation goals. So it's and we can also see that how the center how the Southeast Asian countries require such kind of funding to meet the climate change adaptation goals. So we will be concerning about the agriculture basically. So annual adaptation investment which is needed is around $16 billion per year in order to tackle the chronic hunger due to the climate change, which I think is a great fit, like what we are talking about currently about the urban horticulture, which can easily fit into it, because the role of urban horticulture that plays in adaptation, it can help in the food security, because one of the major goals of the climate change adaptation is food security as well, and temperature regulation. The lot of the IPCC report is not in the favor or very good favor of the environmental factors. So, and we are seeing the increasing temperature day by day. So it can also contribute to temperature regulation. And the water management has always been an important issue for in the urban areas, and especially after the climate change. So rain gardens and the green infrastructure may enhance some storm water management. And of course, the biodiversity, the local biodiversity is needed to be taken care and conserved. And in that case, urban horticulture can play a very major role in such adaptation. These are some landmark examples of the urban horticulture. The first image is from the rooftop garden from the Singapore. Another one is the Detroit urban complexes, where it started in the 1890 and serves the major food channel for the urban people. And third image is from the Wimbledon, and I'm not sure whether it can contribute into the horticulture because it's mostly ornamental. But yeah, I mean it's a great way to reduce the and how to reduce the temperature and to contribute into the greenery of the urban environment, urban space. So there are certain there are a lot of environmental and social impacts which we can see on the which can be tackled by the urban horticulture. We can reduce the carbon footprint, lower transportation emissions. Basically, if we get food from the local urban environment, there is no need to have a transportation system which will add in to the reduction of the emissions. And mostly it has been also been covered by the previous speakers about the community engagement, which is very essential for social cohesion and the community resilience. And the economic opportunities are also there in the urban farming. I mean, we can engage a lot of community along with the economic prospect. And of course, there are a lot of health benefits as well. Getting the fresh air, fresh nutrition, and green spaces improve the physical and mental health, as it was previously said by Dr. Urvashi. So I have this much of things to share with you. So thank you for your patience, and sorry for the technical glitch that had happened. And I hope we all can learn a lot more of. We can already have learned a lot of things about the urban horticulture.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your valuable time and for joining this webinar. On the behalf of organizing committee, ISTM and IRAJ webinars, I would like to thank all the sponsors and our coordinators. And I would like to thank all the sponsors and coordinators. I would also like to thank our president. We're happy to hear your comments and compliments or suggestions at our Facebook and Twitter page. This video will be available shortly in our YouTube channel. Kindly subscribe our official YouTube channel, IRAJ conferences and seminars for all past and upcoming webinars and expert lectures. Thank you all. See you on another webinar soon. Thank you, Professor, for sharing your valuable time and joining this webinar. Thank you.